The New Mexico Supreme Court will take up a lawsuit about Governor Martinez's vetoes of funding for higher education in the legislature in a few weeks. There's still a lot of uncertainty about what's next, but we do know the issue of the state budget and funding for colleges and universities is on many New Mexicans' minds this week. Our line opinion panelists are ready to share their thoughts on the latest developments in this ongoing debate. I'm joined this week at the table by Tom Garrity of the Garrity Group PR, Daniel Foley, he's here, a former New Mexico House Minority Whip, Christine Sear, a retired UNM political science professor, is here, and Sophie Martin, one of our regulars and an attorney and editor of DukeCityFix.com. A lot of stuff there, Soph. Now, higher education folks, Tom, Secretary Dameron has said, look, the May 1st deadline is off since you can't quite balance your budget if you show a goose egg on the incoming side of the ledger sheet, so you can't plan. So there's a lot of activity going on right here, but the special session still looms. What's your overall take about where we sit right now in this ongoing story?
Wow. So do I have the whole half hour?
Right.
Then? Okay. Yeah. So where we sit right now is that, you know, there's a lot of black eyes that we need to deal with internally in New Mexico and outside of New Mexico. Specific to higher education, there is a black eye on the quality and management of higher education in New Mexico, and that's just because of the veto. Even though everybody outside of New Mexico isn't familiar with the battles, all they know is that the entire higher education budget has been squashed.
Good point there.
And so, you know, there's a huge perception issue that the universities and community colleges are facing, not just nationally but locally. Santa Fe Community College, you know, declaring a state of emergency. You know, many other universities wondering what's going on, and you know, parents and students alike wondering, well, what does this mean for the upcoming, you know, fall semester? So, you know, lots of chaos right now. You know, hopefully it'll all, you know, resolve itself rather quickly.
That's right, Christine. Good to see you. By the way, glad you're here. I'm sure you're, you know, grateful to be retired out of this situation.
Well, they say my timing was impeccable. Yes. Because of the fallout and the chaos, as you referred to.
What is the fallout, by the way, for folks coming up this fall?
The direct impact of the impasse that we're at right now has already taken a toll with the budget cuts. So the budget cuts are there. The fact that the budget has not been finalized, though, brings a lot of discussion, concern, and just not having things finalized. It creates chaos in the budgeting process. I actually talked to a couple of people on campus and departments. My department, former department, says, well, we're ready. We're just waiting for things to be finalized. So there's not really a direct hit anymore unless there are further cuts. What's hurting, Gene, is the instability of it all and the fact that, for example, some faculty may say that the morale on campus is very bad. And some faculty may say, you know what, I'm going to retire, or I'm going to resign, or I'm going to accept that job offer that's someplace else. So the fact that UNM is part of national competition for both, you know, the cream of the crop faculty, for retaining their faculty, or for getting graduate students. It's in that climate, it's in that national arena as well as local arena that UNM is not doing well because of this situation.
That makes sense. I want to swing back to the governor, Dan, by the way. We have this impasse, it seems. LFC has come out with a report saying, hey, you know what, furloughs might not be necessary, as a matter of fact. We do have the dough to get through the end of June, or the end of July, I should say. But the governor has not moved at all on this. What's your sense of that? Is there an end game here for the governor to be able to get around that idea that we do in fact have the money? We don't need furloughs.
Well, you know, I think there's a couple of issues. One of them is, you know, the governor has the executive priority to say we're going to furlough employees. I think LSC coming in saying you can't do that. They can't tell her she can't. She can still send a directive.
I'm not sure if they
say
she can't.
Oh, I know. Saying that they've got the money, and, you know, opens up a whole new conversation. Do we actually have cash in the bank? Are we spending money that's, you know, that we don't have? Are we using emergency reserves? What are we doing to do that? And if we've got that money, why are we not using that for the schools? I think it's a unique situation. This whole impasse with the lawsuit that we're going to talk about as well. You know, I think everybody's kind of staring at each other, trying to figure out what's going to happen. You know, I think from the governor's perspective, I think she's going to wait to call a special session until after the Supreme Court rules. She has no reason to. She said she's not going to raise taxes. If the Supreme Court comes back and says you have to raise taxes, then you know what? She gets to do what the court says. It's not her fault. She didn't do it. She gets to say, I still have never raised the tax. If the Supreme Court says that she's not wrong, then she gets to go in with kind of a court order and tells the legislature what to do. If I'm a betting man, she's not going to be on the winning end of what the Supreme Court says. But when it comes, the thing that I think is really worrisome about the whole situation is right now is we're talking about higher education. Well, if the Supreme Court comes back and says you can't do this and you got to fund this higher education stuff, they're basically going to now operate higher education under sort of like a Duran decree, right? The court says you got to do this going into this legislative session.
Right.
Well, then guess what? K through 12. Guess what? Pre-K. Guess what? Police. Guess what? Transportation. We got to answer this. So I think it's going to put the Supreme Court in a unique situation. And I got to tell you, even though I'm always ripping the justices for being partisan, which I think they are, I think this may be too political of a situation that they want to get in. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't come back and say, you guys got a certain amount of time to go figure this out. We're going to give you, we're kind of leaning this way, but we're going to give you some time to go fix this. So I would suggest that I would think that they're going to come back and say, we're hearing the case. We've heard opening arguments. I'm not sure the schematics. I'll defer to you. We're taking it under advisement. You guys need to go back. You got 30 days to figure it out. Special session will be called, and there'll be a constant report to the court. And I think that they'll come to some closure before the court has to rule, because even though I'm critical of the Supreme Court, I don't think they want to be pitting higher ed against K through 12 or higher ed against Medicaid, and I don't think it's a place that they want to be.
Good points there. Appreciate that. Sophie, the New Mexico Council of University Presidents have also been asked to submit their thoughts to the Supreme Court. Is that unusual? I know this is a sort of an unusual case, but asking for outside parties?
Not
so to speak?
particularly.
Okay.
I mean, often outside parties will sort of offer themselves.
Right.
They'll file friends of the court briefs, et cetera, hoping to provide more context. And often a group like the university presidents are able to bring factual information that's harder to bring in the brief in chief and the response and the reply. So they provide some context for the argument that's going on. Right. One of the things that's really unusual, remarkable about this request for a writ of mandamus, which is essentially a request for the Supreme Court to say you must do or you must not do, because there is a public obligation for you to perform or not perform based on what you're doing, a public duty. One of the things that I think is so fascinating about this is, and a little bit to Dan's point, higher education is part of the Constitution. Funding the legislature is part of the Constitution. There are other things, of course, that are part of the Constitution. And so I would expect that, if there is a ruling that goes in a particular direction, that it would also cover some of those other things. It might, in fact, cut off the governor's ability to cut back in other areas through a system like this.
That's an interesting
But
thought.
at the heart of this is not so much does the governor have the right to line item veto. It's really, does the governor have the ability to shut down a constitutionally mandated arm of government or funding recipient, or function, I should say, of government.
And remember, the Constitution says you can't wipe someone away with zero funding.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
That's right.
even if we do go zero funding, the legislature, or I believe the governor, then they have to be funded at 15% less than they were the year before. And so you could zero it out again, but they're going to get 15%. So it would take whatever that math is to actually. So tomorrow you couldn't do away with the Department of Health.
I see.
If you did a stroke of the pen and we said we're not funding the Department of Health, then the department, you could do away with it. But if we said we're not funding the Department of Health as a way to do away with it, then they would get 15% less than the budget they had last
It's an
year.
interesting question, because we also have that mandate for a balanced
Right.
budget. And so if a balanced budget is not put forward, there's only so much funding, the minus 15%, whether it be 85%,
Right.
doesn't fit into that, then you have another crisis.
There you go.
And I think it
So
raises
let
a
me
great.
swing these guys in. Sorry, Dan, my fault. Peter Wirth's name came up through the governor's spokesperson. The idea of the continuing politicization of this argument, right? That the governor doesn't want to put $350 million worth of tax, stuff on the backs of New Mexico families when in fact no such thing is being proposed. How do we break through this morass and get to some kind of clarity here on this?
Yeah, morass is actually a great word. It all comes down to, I look at how do both sides succeed
Right.
as a result result of going to the higher court,
Okay.
the Supreme Court. The keys to success, both sides or the winning side will need to practice a lot of transparency. That they enter evidence in some form or fashion, testimony, post it on a state site. You know, say, you know what, we are the transparent ones. You don't have to figure out where we stand on this. The other is provide solutions instead of criticize. Because while politicization of the issue is very popular, it's the in thing to do these days.
Right.
There is this huge group of middle New Mexico, as far as our own Reagan Democrats, the folks who are in the middle, who are watching all of this to say, how bad is this really going to get? Is it just going to reinforce how much I dislike state government officials? And while it might not mean much now, it will mean a whole lot, come the gubernatorial election in a couple of years. So
point
those
there.
are two keys to success there.
Absolutely, Tom.
But the optics of this too are just really deplorable. And I think of two levels again. For the community in general, students who are thinking, they may not understand that, yes, there will be a budget for higher education, but they're thinking, Mom, especially our first generation college kids, what's going to happen? Am I really getting into a situation that is very unstable? So at the community level, there's got to be a lot of discord and concern. And I go back to the fact that our higher educational institutions should be the shining stars and to be promoted. We're going to be talking about the difficulties with the economy, with a number of different aspects of the health of our state. Education is clearly a prime way in which to improve a lot of facets of our general lifestyle and life quality. So the fact that the governor chose to keep higher education hostage, to me, is a terrible choice, and it's a terrible way to play politics. So we're in this morass. I think the collateral damage done that maybe is just a little bit intangible, but the fact that UNM's there goes.
That's right. That's right.
The fact that we're not promoting higher education, but keeping it under wraps and hostage in this climate of instability, I think is terrible.
That makes a good point. When we come back to the line, we'll talk about the health and potential future of New Mexico's economy.